So my name is Kim Boxberger, and currently I have a bachelor's in elementary education, a master's in ESOL. I'm just waiting for the testing to open, and I will also have my reading specialist, and I am one class short of my PhD in curriculum and instruction. I live in Russell, Kansas, which is about a little 2 hours shy, south and west. If I get my directions right, I could be wrong. And I think about 2 years is the length of the program I've been working on currently.
Great, thank you. How about you, Bonnie?
Okay, my name is Bonnie Bruvieska. I am majoring in business, human resources, and management. I started spring of 2019. I just returned after a many-year absence. Something I've always wanted to finish. So I'm finishing my undergraduate through K-State, and it's been really easy. But I live in Southwest Kansas over by Garden City. So the online has been about the only option I have. So anyway, that's about it.
Great, thank you. Well, our first question is, why did you choose to be an online student? Bonnie, you kind of started to hint at that. Could you maybe elaborate a little bit more on why you chose this and what your experience has been like?
Yeah, well, I started up at K-State and then ended up quitting and getting married. And so that came back to Southwest Kansas to live. And here in this area, there's not a whole lot of options and stuff there, and online just seemed to work great. I didn't realize how easy it was going to be as far as to apply and to get going and stuff. So that just the remoteness of where I live and the way it would work with my schedule was the biggest factors.
That's definitely true for many students. The convenience and geographic flexibility makes a big difference with online learning. How about you, Kim?
For me, I have 3 children who are very close in age, so I sort of took a break from my education right out of high school and then was able to get back in with Fort Hays and finish, and then I wanted to pursue higher education, and K-State was my option there. And I was, besides a mom, I was also teaching both through a Fort Hays class and kindergarten. And then I was also coaching high school volleyball. I was the head coach. So for me, it was also the flexibility of when I could take classes and when I could get my work done.
That flexibility is a trend, obviously, we continue to see across students, and something that we've really been emphasizing in the OCDI to incorporate that into class design. We've had another panelist join us. Megan, could you jump on and introduce yourself, name, major, where you're located, and what made you choose to be an online student?
Hi, my name is Megan Basley. I live in White City, Kansas, which is about an hour south of Manhattan. I chose to be an online student because I have 2 young kids, and it was easier to work around their schedule. Being an online student, I didn't have set times that I had to go to class. I could do it when it met my schedule. And then that helped me take care of my children and be able to complete school.
Great.
I started out as secondary, and I went to campus for 2 semesters, and then I switched to elementary when my advisor had let me know that it was available online for elementary.
Great. Thank you, Megan. The next question that I think you all have really already hit on, but I'm going to bring it up just in case there's anything additional you'd like to say, is how has being an online learner impacted your ability to juggle work, home, and school? So many of you have talked about you chose this modality to be able to juggle those things. And one thing that we continue to want our instructors to be cognizant of is those multiple roles that people are juggling. Can you maybe expand on how online learning has helped that and what time management looks like for you? Kim, maybe if you would want to get us started.
Oh yes, time management. So as a mom, coach, and teacher, and then a student myself, that was definitely a juggling act, no doubt. So for me, I just got a planner and I just made sure that I laid everything out, and I just really had to find long evening hours to just stay up and kind of to get my work finished. And then weekends, obviously, if we weren't traveling to some activity, I really spent time studying. But I really just devoted as much time as I could when I had the chance for my classes at that time. And then I only, being flexible with the online learning, I took 1 or 2 classes at a time. That way I didn't feel overwhelmed, but I was still working towards a goal.
Great, thank you. Bonnie, Megan, anything you'd like to add to time management?
Just in my experience, I'm self-employed, so the time it was pretty easy to plan my week and be able to do that. I also substitute teach and have a couple bookkeeping jobs, but they're all flexible hours. So time management has been a huge issue. My daughter's 17, so she's old enough to do her own thing and stuff, but it is definitely something, it's hard to kind of do, but it is hard being a mother and going to all of her events and working all my jobs and being self-employed and trying to keep my business afloat and stuff. So it's hard, but it's worth it.
Absolutely. Megan, anything else you'd like to add?
Just for time management, like having your syllabus on there with the due dates for different assignments was really helpful. I like to print those off, and then I would go through on my planner and write, okay, I have this due for this class. And that helped me so I could plan like, oh, I have this much due. I don't want to make my kids' doctor's appointments for this day. Or, you know, some classes were like, oh, I'm just going to have the due dates as we go along. And that was super stressful for me because then I didn't know. It was like, oh, all of a sudden I have this paper due or this assignment due that I wasn't ready for because it wasn't on the syllabus.
So that structure and being able to plan ahead was really key to helping you with your time management is what I'm hearing.
Yes.
And Megan, that leads me into my next question. So you might want to stay on if you want to expand any further, is how do you approach online learning? And thinking about what everyone said about time management, how does the structure of a course either help or hurt with how you approach a course for online learning?
Well, like for Canvas, which is what K-State uses, and a lot of other schools use that as well. You have files, you can put it in different groups. And I felt like the classes that had them separated like weekly, this is what you're doing, this is the stuff you need for this assignment, and this is your assignment. Having them all together right there was very helpful. Whereas other classes that it was just kind of like, well, we're going to be covering this, so I have this information here, but you might use it in week 1, you might use it in week 5, you might use it several different weeks. That was kind of frustrating because then you had to search more for it, which some people can do, but those people that have kids or they have other jobs or, you know, whatever the situation may be, they may not have time to sit down and just look through every file every time they need to do an assignment. So just having your stuff together and where it needs to be for each week or each assignment is really helpful to your students. And also I feel like it would be helpful as a teacher to know that, oh, I have all of this here. So if I need to find it to send to a student, I know where I can find it at.
Great points. Yeah, again, emphasizing that structure and kind of setting a roadmap. Some of those things that we talked about last week with course mapping might be good. Speaking to the OCDI participants to really think about how are you setting up your course so that students know how to navigate through it. Bonnie, Kim, anything you'd like to add about how you approach an online course and what's worked well or what's maybe made that challenging for you?
I wanted to kind of tell what Megan was talking about. Those classes that I've had the best success and felt the most in control of or whatever is those classes who they would put on there Sunday night, Monday morning, this is what you have to do for the week. You know, if I had a really busy week and I got it all done by Tuesday, great. If I had to, you know, busy first part of the week and then had to wait till later in the week, then that was fine too. But you know, at the beginning of the week, what's expected. And there was a few instructors I had that even like on the modules themselves would put, okay, you know, there's a video in here that's 34 minutes. That way you're not surprised thinking, okay, I have 2 hours mapped out. What if I have an hour and a half video and then I have to write a paper? You know, it was better to have that capability to kind of know what each module was going to take as far as time, or what videos were included, or lectures, or whatever. And then you can just get it done whenever you want. But that was the best for me.
Great, thank you. Kim, anything additional from your end?
I agree with both of what they said. They're spot on. I appreciated the modules when they were laid out, like they said, just real easy to click on and everything was right there. Or if an instructor would say, well, you might need to refer back to this that was at the beginning. I just appreciated that everything was laid out in a nice format. I was really only, at this point, like I said, I have one class left, but at this point, there was really only one class where I struggled with keeping up with assignments because it wasn't clear. So everyone that I've experienced right now has done a phenomenal job with that.
Great, thank you. We're getting some really good questions in the chat, so I'm gonna start peppering those in. The first one is really related to assessments and specifically proctoring of exams. Eva asks, I've been hearing about online proctoring of exams and wondered if any of you had experienced that and how you feel about having someone watching you through the computer camera while taking an exam. Has anybody had a proctoring experience? Let's see, I'm seeing Bonnie nod her head yes. Would you like to talk about that a little bit, Bonnie?
Yeah, my proctoring experience was great at the beginning of all this because I used to take them at Garden City Community College just here locally. You just paid to take a test, and that was better for me because it fit. I mean, in one way because it was someone I knew. You know, we develop a rapport with those, and you go to a place, you in a room by yourself or whatever. The online proctoring that I've done through Examity. The first experience I had where I had a live person watching me was okay, except for she interrupted me a couple of times. She's like, I was like this, and she's like, oh, you need to move your face because your hair's in your face. So I had to stop and rearrange. And so that was a little bit, the language barrier was pretty difficult at the very beginning. And then I've done a few more where they're automated proctoring or like, there's not actually a person watching you, but it is recorded, I think, and probably looked at later with all the COVID stuff. That's been okay. The only thing is, I don't know, just some of their rules are, like I like to take mine at my kitchen table. Well, my kitchen table oftentimes will still have my napkin holder, my mail from the week, my salt and pepper shaker, you know, and they're like, oh no, everything has to be cleared. And my internet speed, when all this COVID took place, my internet speed really dropped. And so one time I wasn't able to take a test because my upload speed wasn't up to par. I had checked it that morning and it was fine, but by 4 o'clock, whenever I was taking the test, it was bad. So online proctoring is not my favorite at all, but I mean, I know why it needs to be done, but it's just, I don't know.
I appreciate that honest assessment, Bonnie. I mean, there definitely can be a time and place for proctoring, but I'm also interested, and this is for all three of you, to talk about what assessment methods you felt were not only most convenient, but really were effective in you being able to demonstrate your learning in an online course. So assessments can be nerve-wracking, but are there any that you really have felt have done a good job, and what was the setup like for those?
I think like for my statistics classes that I've taken, I like the instructor there. They were paper tests where I had to have a proctor, and I went actually to Garden City. They were a paper test. You wrote down, I think they emailed everything. They emailed the scratch paper, everything. And that was real helpful as far as, you know, I think the instructor may have given partial credit, you know, if you just made a calculation error wrong. I did the principles of finance class. He didn't do that at all. It was like, here's the test, A, B, C, or D. You know, the only other bad part, and my human resources management instructor was really good about this, is that I maybe am one of very few, you know, I like to learn what I did wrong and learn from my mistakes and stuff. So it would have been helpful. I realize you can't always give per person back the test so you can see what you did wrong, but I like to know what I did wrong. And a lot of times with this online and with the proctoring and just online test taking, you know, you get the score at the end, okay, you got an 89, but which ones did you get wrong? Was it just you typed something wrong? Was it you chose the wrong answer? That was hard for me, is the feedback really isn't there on online test taking, I don't think.
That's a really good point, Bonnie. A face-to-face class may have a day after the test where the instructor is able to answer questions more informally. So for our OCDI participants, you might want to consider, how can I recreate that type of back and forth and helping students understand so they can learn more from the exam in the online environment? Megan and Kim, is there anything about assessments that you'd like to add?
I only had 2 classes where I had assessments. They were not proctored, but my professors did go ahead and cover that. They would say it's due like Thursday, and then say we would have a Zoom meeting for anyone who wants to discuss how it went. And she was very helpful in explaining, sort of like how Bonnie mentioned, with if your calculations were wrong or how she would have done it differently. So I appreciated that. She didn't make it mandatory, but I did like that it was available to us.
Great, thank you. Elizabeth asks in the chat, you all sound super motivated and organized. Can you talk about your experiences interacting with other students and collaborating with them through various types of assignments and experiences? What are you guys' thoughts on group work? What has that been like for you in the online environment?
For me, it's been, kind of easy and kind of difficult. Just depends on the assignment, really. I feel like it's just kind of like an in-class assignment where it's like, well, you have to make time to meet with your group members. The people I was with that were in the same group as me, sometimes we would meet. There was a group of us that were usually always on the Zoom sessions weekly. And so if our teacher couldn't meet, sometimes we would jump on anyway and just talk about our weekly assignments, where we were at, ask each other questions. I know I have one classmate that I'm still talking to on Facebook about our testing because we just finished our bachelor's. And so we're still talking about like, hey, we're getting ready to take this test for our license. And if we don't know, then we say, hey, we have this other person that was with us too. And so we'll email them, or we'll Facebook message them, or text them, or however we can get with them. So it's still making that group, the connections together, even though you're online and not face to face. You just kind of, instead of seeing them, you just kind of, oh, I have a question. I'm just going to randomly email this person. And if they answer, great. And if not, then I just email somebody else. You don't really have that chance to talk to them in the classroom and ask. So it's just over email. And then maybe it might be like, hey, I'm going to send you this on Facebook, so I'm going to add you. Is that okay? There's still the zones of making sure that they're okay with it, they're comfortable, and not making it creepy. Mostly it's women that are in my group, but if there was a male, you'd want to be like, hey, I would like to add you on Facebook so we can talk about this more, or I'm going to email you. Are you okay with that? Just crossing the line still on online learning, and in the classroom learning has to be there. But it's still about making those connections and being with each other, being able to talk to each other. And then, letting your students know, hey, if you need to Zoom and just talk, that's fine. I can set it up and be there, or, let them know that's okay. I'm okay with you talking about it as long as you're doing the work.
Those are great points, Megan. Thank you. Bonnie, Kim, anything you'd like to add about interacting with students, collaborative work?
So for me, with the higher ed classes, I appreciate that my instructors have always had discussion boards, or they've kind of said part of your points are to review your peers' work and ask questions. So we're still doing some deeper thinking. I really like that part of it. And I have become great friends with quite a few of my classmates. We have exchanged emails, or like Megan said, with Facebook, we've friends that way, so we can bounce curriculum ideas off each other. So I always appreciate the discussion boards or the assignments where we are forced to think outside the box and maybe work with another person and say, how did your assignment go here? Why did you think that? So they're kind of as a peer instead of another teacher. So it would be working alongside of you. I appreciated the peer discussion, things like that. So.
Our next question comes from Kurt, and it's very similar into what you were getting at just now, Kim. Kurt says, first, thanks to the panelists for being here. It's interesting to me that all of you are in the education field. Thank you for your impact to our children. It sounds like most of your online experience has been asynchronous. Have you faced challenges with feeling disconnected from the rest of the class? And if so, what are your recommendations for how we as instructors can help our students feel more connected? Kim, you were starting to get at that with the discussion boards. Are there other strategies that have made you feel connected to not only your instructor, but your peers in your class, for anybody?
I've never had a bad experience. Like I said, I have one class left, and I have been very fortunate to have people who have been open to just about anything. If we had issues in one class and we would say, then the instructor would say, okay, so here's a discussion board thread to start asking questions, or let's have a Zoom where we can kind of talk it out and hash it out. And there would be multiple times to do that. From my point of view, I haven't had any real bad experiences yet.
Bonnie, Megan, anything you'd like to add about engagement in the class?
I really liked the classes where we had a weekly Zoom session, even if it was just, hey, I'm going to check in. You don't have to be here. If you have questions, hop on and ask. We had one that we would have a weekly, like I said, and sometimes we would hop on even if she said, hey, I have other things, so we're not going to meet, we'd hop on and meet anyway. And sometimes it was just, hey, I'm going to hop on, check with you. She'd say, how's everything going? Are you doing okay? And, you know, it might be a 30-minute Zoom session and we'd hop off and then we'd be good to go. But it just felt good to just check in. And even with one class, I mean, I wouldn't mind doing it with every class just to see, hey, you guys might have questions. Other people might have questions that you might not have thought of, or that maybe they're working on the assignment and you're not quite yet. So that just helps to just check in, you know, once a week or every other week just to see where everybody's at and answer any questions.
Great, thank you.
I wanted to add one thing on like the discussion boards and stuff. Like for some of my classes, you know, there may be, you know, they're not huge classes, 30, 40 people in the class or whatever. But I did have one class, I can't remember which one it was, but it broke us out into groups. And we were with that same group of like 6, 8, somewhere around in there. And so we were in a discussion. So you seem to get to know that person or that person's work, or, you know, a little bit better, rather than, because there's nothing more annoying to me personally on Sunday night, the assignments due at midnight, and my notifications start going crazy around 7 because everybody's turning in last minute stuff, you know, whereas, you know, I did the post maybe on Thursday. Now, don't get me wrong, sometimes I'm that one that's doing it late Sunday too, but when you have such a large class, and then you get notifications for the large discussions, it worked better, I thought, for having smaller groups. And as far as the Zoom, I really don't have much experience with that at all with any of my instructors. So,
Bonnie, that's a great point in thinking about volume and the ability to have depth in the discussion boards. In a face-to-face class, 40 students would not necessarily be encouraged to discuss together. So whereas you would break them into small groups in a face-to-face course. So replicating that with grouping in Canvas is a great suggestion and really adds an opportunity for more depth to the discussion as well. our questions continue to flow with the discussion well. Bill would like to hear your thoughts about synchronous or live versus asynchronous class meetings. A couple of you have mentioned that Zoom meetings were utilized. What are your thoughts on that? Was needing to tune in live at a certain time and participate beneficial? If so, why? If it was challenging, what would you have liked better?
A lot of my teachers would send out a poll at the beginning of the class and just ask, hey, these are the times that would work good for me. Pick a time that would work best for you, and then we'll see which one. And sometimes they would say, okay, we're going to have it maybe Monday night and then maybe Tuesday during the day. And so the people that could get on Monday would get on, and then the people that could get on Tuesday or whichever day they picked would get on, and there would just be 2 Zoom sessions instead of 1. Which sometimes would help because then there wasn't as many people that needed to ask questions. And then if you were on the second one, the professor could say, hey, these questions were brought up, so I'm going to relay them to you and tell you the answers to those because you might have those same questions. And it's just easier to go ahead and answer them rather than to wait on you to ask them, or maybe just overlook them and not say anything. And then later the second class is emailing saying, I'm not understanding this, or asking the same questions maybe that the first class asked.
And Megan, did you feel like needing to tune into those live meetings was helpful for your learning experience?
It was helpful. And I mean, my professors understood that I had little kids too, so they got to know them as well a little bit because I had one of them in the classroom as well as then online. And so she got to see them a couple of times in the classroom and then on Zoom. So they really, I mean, kind of become like family, and they know about you. They know what you're doing, where you're at in your program, and they know, I mean, it's not a lot different from being in the class, except you can't say, hey, I'm going to stay after class and ask you a question, but you can still say, hey, can you stay on after the meeting because I have a question that really isn't pertaining to the rest of the class.
Great point. Thank
so
you.
You can make it be similar to the in-class learning.
Yeah, great point. Kim, did you have anything to add?
Yes, I appreciated, still again with the flexibility. I had one class that stuck out in my mind that we had a weekly meeting. It wasn't mandatory, but the instructor made sure that she recorded it. That way, if we would like to have heard what was going on in that session, we could go back and then revisit. The hardest part was like if you had a question, then you'd have to email your professor. But I really enjoyed that. Still, again, with the flexibility, she did a great job with having the face-to-face. This was our schedule every Tuesday night from 7 to 8. If you can't come, fine. But the recording it made it great because if I had like an open house or something where I would miss, I could still come back and hear what she had taught or what my peers had been talking about.
Great, thank you. Another question from the chat, Eve asks, this is 2 parts. What do you wish you'd known when you started taking online classes, and what has been most challenging for you? See some thoughtful reflection.
I think maybe on my part, as far as what I didn't realize it would be, and I don't mean easy like it's a breeze, but it was just easy to get started. Everybody works with you, everybody cares. Your instructors, most of them usually care about, what you're doing and how the transition would, in my personal life, that I could transition to doing it so easily. I guess you can make time for it. Whereas I really thought at first, I thought, oh, there's just no way. But I've been taking usually at least 9 hours every semester that I started back, and haven't found it to be too big of a problem.
Great, thank you.
With the PhD side, the only thing that I think I knew, but I didn't really internalize at the time was I was told that it was research heavy. And I was like, oh, I've done online classes now for a while, so I'm good at it. So, I mean, I was only able to take maybe 1 or 2 courses, which is either 3 or 6 hours at a time because it was research heavy. So I knew it, but I think I didn't really want to believe that it would be as time consuming as it was. That was probably my biggest challenge, or what I wish I knew kind of going, maybe it should have just sunk in better.
Kim, I think that's a good point. And even outside of graduate work in the undergraduate experience, students often underestimate the amount of time that needs put into an online course. Just like with a face-to-face course, you have the class time, which is usually the interacting in Canvas, and then you have time for outside reading, homework, research, things like that. And so something that we've encouraged our OCDI participants to think about is not only how much time do they expect students to put into the class, but communicating that out as best they can as well. Megan, is there anything you'd like to add about what you wish you would have known ahead of time, and maybe what's been most challenging as an online learner for you?
It was just a little challenging to switch from in the classroom to online, just because I was used to, oh, I can go to class, I can ask questions, and then it was like, oh, no, you have a set time, you know, you have to email the teacher, or you have to wait till the scheduled Zoom session if they don't have time to schedule just the Zoom session with you. But I didn't have any issues because I took classes for a while online before I went to K-State. So it was really just like, oh, I can do this, and it's a lot easier for my schedule.
Great, great. Thank you. Eve asks, what do assignments look like in your courses? Are you having exams, discussion boards, writing papers, etc.? And then additionally, if you've done both face-to-face and online classes, can you compare them in terms of what worked best for your engagement, learning, and rigor? Eve's specifically thinking about how is she going to take her face-to-face courses to translate to online. So think about what kind of assignments have you had? What have those been like? And then for anyone that's done both face-to-face and online, how has that compared?
So when I was in face-to-face classes, they might separate us into groups where the teacher can walk around and just check in with each group. You can do the same thing on Zoom. I had a class where we were all together, however many there was, and then she would separate us and say, okay, these people are going to work on this question. She'd say, pull this up. These people are going to talk about this question. And then you can separate them into rooms, and then the teacher can go to each one and just talk to, hey, how is it going? What are you discussing? And kind of do the same thing that you would do in the classroom, just you're on the computer and in your own house talking to your peers.
Great, thank you. Bonnie, Kim, additional thoughts?
I agree with that too. I've had everything: exams, discussions, papers, presentations, just everything you can imagine. But I just feel like it's not, to me, it's not too different, because I've just been fortunate to have people who have really pushed the discussion and the interaction with my other classmates, whether it's set up your own Zoom meeting or email. So for me, I do appreciate that I have been pushed to use different, I guess, technological things. Like I never would have used a S'more before, or Adobe Spark, or anything like that. So I've really been able to branch out and examine those things. So I can even use those when I'm doing a presentation for like my kindergarten team. So it's been nice to be able to use maybe something different that the face-to-face class may not have, where it's more hands-on.
Great, thank you. Eve asks, have any of you had a science class with a lab online? And if so, what worked and what didn't work for you?
I did. I took a lab where you studied the different rocks. And so you had to pay, they sent you a kit out with the different rocks, and you had to identify them. And there was a different thing you had to do each week with them. And then I did have to go in to Manhattan and take a test at the testing center and take those rocks with me. I thought it was kind of hard because there was really nothing from my teacher. There was videos you had to watch. It was really a teach yourself, and if you didn't know, you had to work really hard. And that class, I really struggled in it. I passed it, but it was super hard because, I mean, I would email the teacher and he might take a couple of days to email me back, but there was no, we're going to Zoom and talk about this. It was just, watch this video, which I didn't feel like was a very good one for me, just because I didn't know that much about them, about the rocks. And it was an intro class, so I thought it was going to be a lot easier than it was. So, I mean, just making sure, I guess, that your lab classes meet the expectations of the level that they are.
That's some great feedback, Megan. And some of the things that you touched on are good principles for any online course, but when there's that hands-on applied learning, it might be even more important to have things like regular communication, different structure to the course, things like that. Bonnie, Kim, did you have any experience with an online lab you'd like to add? Nope, doesn't look like it. Okay, so moving on, Duke has a question about chat in Canvas. Have any of you used the chat feature? He says, I have used discussion boards as a student in online courses, but never had the chat used in a course. Did you find it useful?
I never was able to use that. We just did, there was a discussion thread, so I didn't realize maybe that was even a thing.
I had one professor that would say, I'm going to be on maybe Tuesday nights, and then sometimes he wasn't, and I would sit there for 30 minutes and wait. So I felt like it wasn't a very good tool. Zooming or emailing would be better.
Good feedback. Thank you, Megan. The last question we have in the chat is from Bill, and he says that apart from the already discussed benefits such as flexible scheduling, what, if any, things might be considered better about online learning than face-to-face courses? In other words, what can face-to-face educators borrow from online courses to improve that mode of instruction? You guys have all hit on several times the flexibility and how that's worked better for where you're at in your lives, but are there other things that have been beneficial, more beneficial in the online environment than in the face-to-face courses you've experienced?
I just like how they, and maybe they do it in face-to-face. I know face-to-face has the syllabus of different due dates and stuff, but I just like knowing, okay, this week, this is the material that's going to be covered. This is what you have to do. You know, that made it nice. That's a nice thing for me, knowing what's expected every week. Whereas, you know, you can plan your life a little better. You know, if you know what's going to be happening, maybe next week you're going to have more lectures or a bigger paper to write. You know, just make sure the communication is there as far as what's expected week to week. Because for online, you know, being self-employed, like I said, my schedule is very flexible. However, there's some weeks that, you know, I have more to do than others, and it's just nice to know what's expected each week.
Great, thank you, Bonnie.
I would have to say that the majority of all of my degrees combined has been online. I never really appreciated the face-to-face once I got to the online, but as a teacher myself, and I mean, I'm speaking from a person who teaches little bodies, the 5 and 6 year olds, I don't feel like you can really replace a super face-to-face class with online. You can supplement and it can work for you. But to me, and this is just my opinion, to me, there's really nothing like being in a classroom at the moment, because it's just different. You get to learn things on spur of the moment that you may not get online. It's nice that it's flexible because it has worked for me, but I really do miss being in the classroom, talking with my instructors or my peers, and just having that sort of classroom atmosphere that's different from the online class.
Great, thank you, Kim. I think I've gotten through all the questions in the chat. So if any of our participants have any others, please add those now. I'm going to go back to 2 of our scripted questions as we wait to see if any more come in from our participants. The first one, and I'd like each of you to address this if possible. What advice would you give a new student about online learning?
Be organized. Get a planner, write it down, print out the syllabuses so that you have it. Get a folder to put them in, even if you just have one. I just would paperclip them, and I'd have one side that I still needed to work on when I was done with that week, so I'd put it on the other side that I had labeled done. Just make sure that you know what you're doing and you have a plan, you have time set every day, whether it's in the morning, the afternoon, after your kids go to bed, whenever. Just have a time that you can sit down and work on your classes.
That's great advice. Thank you, Megan. Bonnie, how about you?
Pretty much what she said. Just make sure that you map out the certain times, whatever times it works. Sometimes it might be Tuesday nights, sometimes it might be Wednesday mornings, but just have a plan each week to know that you have to devote it. Don't wait till Sunday night whenever everything's due or whatever. Make sure you get it done, check it off your to-do list, and then you don't have to worry about it again until next week, but be able to at least set aside a certain amount of time to do it.
Great, thank you. Kim, any additional advice for new students to online learning?
They pretty much said it all. I would just say make sure to definitely take time each day to check in on your class, even if nothing's due. Sometimes instructors just sporadically will put up an announcement. It may not be an assignment, but you don't want to miss on anything that they would just happen to say, oh, I came across this cool article today. So just check everything every day, even if it just takes 2 or 3 minutes.
Great advice all around. The other question I had is, what advice would you give an instructor about teaching online?
I just think you need to get good interacting videos, not just PowerPoints all the time, but just, I really enjoyed my instructors like starting out each module with a, hey, how are you doing? Hope you're doing good. This is what's happening this week. The grass is growing, the trees are blooming, whatever, kind of just a personal thing. And just kind of say, okay, this week, you're going to have this paper, you're going to have this, just kind of a informative little lecture. It doesn't have to be long, just a little check-in. I enjoyed those videos that those people gave.
Great, thank you.
Since I also teach online, I just make sure to check your emails regularly. I do understand life happens, but there's a little thing where you can say I'm out of the office. So that way, if I do have a question that's maybe last minute, because I'm not a procrastinator by any means, but there are people out there that do. But just like if I sent an email that said I had this issue, then that way I would know you're out of the office until this date. And then I could reach out maybe to my other classmates to see what their thoughts were on this, whether that be right or wrong. At least I would have someone else to kind of communicate with.
Great, thank you. Megan, any additional advice for a teacher that's going to be teaching online?
I just agree with the email thing. I mean, just plan to check it once a day or, sometime, because their students, I know I emailed once at the beginning of the week and it was due maybe the end, and I'm like, I'm waiting. I can't do this assignment until they email me back. And it took, a couple of days. Just let your students know if you're going to be gone. Because if you were in class, you might say, hey guys, I'm going to be out of town this weekend. I won't have my phone. I won't have access to the internet to check my email, just so you're aware. So if you're online, just let your students know, hey, I'm going to be out of my service zone. I won't be able to answer your emails until this date.
That's great feedback. Really setting expectations around communication, how regularly, how frequently is really important. A couple of additional questions came into the chat before we wrap up this morning. Anne says, I very much appreciate the speaker's perspectives. I'm wondering, are there any teachers from online courses that you stay in touch with or still feel connected to? And this is me adding, if so, maybe share why you still feel connected to those instructors.
Since I'm not finished with my coursework at K-State yet, I can't speak to that point yet, but I know through my Fort Hayes classes with my bachelor's and my master's there, I do keep in touch with about 3 of my professors. And I pretty much guarantee that I'll keep in touch with 2 or 3 from my KSU program as well. I feel like I've been able to bounce ideas off of them as a professional as well as a student. So I really do like that part. Having them in your corner, whether it's something silly like, what necklace do I wear today? Or what topic do I need for my dissertation? So I think that I know that I've made quite a few connections in the higher department right now that I'm quite sure I'll keep in touch with.
Great, thank you.
And I don't know that I'm going to necessarily, I don't know that I'll necessarily keep in touch with anyone because I haven't really had the same instructor more than once at any particular time. But there are a few instructors a handful of instructors on my list that, when I get up to the Manhattan area or graduation time or whatever, I do want to look them up and say, hey, your class was great. I mean, I've emailed and told those instructors that, but there are a few that have made an impact that I'd like to just meet face to face and say, hey, your class was awesome.
Great, thank you. Our last question in the chat is from Elizabeth. She says, I'd love to hear more about specific assignment types. It sounds like the different technologies that translated easily into your professional lives were quite valuable. But thinking more for general education courses, was there a particular technology that wasn't part of your overall learning? Sorry, was a particular technology wasn't part of your overall learning, what kinds of, oh, I see, I'm sorry, I'm misreading this. So if in general ed courses, if there's a technology that wasn't specifically applicable to your professional careers, what kinds of assignment interfaces worked especially well, especially for working with groups? So were there different types of assignments that you liked when you were working individually and as a group? Maybe what did you struggle with?
Would you like me to clarify that question a little bit?
Yes, thank you, Elizabeth. I'm sorry if I didn't do
want
it
to be
justice.
rude and just jump in.
No, please.
So I really appreciate all the people who are in the College of Ed are clearly modeling the kinds of technologies that will be useful to future teachers when they go off in their professional lives. And I admire that, but it doesn't pertain to the kind of thing that I'm doing in more general ed courses. And so since I don't have as a goal for one of my courses, teaching people how to do a particular kind of thing that they can then take into their own teaching or otherwise their professional lives, I'm really interested in how to address that question that Kim was talking about earlier, wanting to have some connection, turning the online learning environment into something social as well as informational. And so what kinds of assignments online worked particularly well for that? Once you take out of the equation stuff you need to learn how to use, and instead you're just having the experience of a shared learning experience. I want to design good group assignments that don't annoy people, but allow them to learn the material and interact with one another. Does that make sense?
Thank you, Elizabeth, for clarifying.
I had one assignment, I can't even remember which class it was, but we wrote the assignment on a regular Word document, shared it. There was only, think there was 2 or 3 of us in our group, and we would share those and then make notes, and that was real helpful. And you had that same group for, I don't think it was the whole semester. I think we switched up halfway through, but you get to know their writing style, they get to know your writing style, you know, and you at first you're a little timid because you don't want to seem to be that person who's so picky about everything, but then you get to learn that, and you just get the good camaraderie going of what's good and what's bad. And it was real helpful in writing a few papers, just, but it has to be a smaller group, I think, just because I don't want to have to read, you know, a half dozen papers or comment, like even with the discussion boards. And you can have the small discussion boards of, you know, just like 6 people or so, and then you get the feel of who that person is over the course of the semester by having that smaller group. So I think the smaller group setting for me personally is better because I get to know that person other than just, you know, Susan Smith, you know, that's listed there on the computer. You get to know kind of a little bit about her and what she's like and what she does or whatever.
Great, thank you. Kim, Megan, any additional thoughts? Okay. I think we have time for probably one more question, and Eve asks a good one to end on. What was the best online class you took and what made it great?
For undergrad, I would say my literature class, because we read, just like you would in the classroom, different books for different age groups. But then we didn't just read them and say, okay, now we're going to read this next one. We had a discussion. She would say, you know, read this much of the book. We talked about it. Then we'd read maybe the rest of the book, depending on how big they were. But we always talked about it. And she always was available if we needed to ask her questions. We could just email her and ask her questions. And then she might send an announcement, hey, I had a student ask this question, so I wanted to make you all aware because you might all be asking that question. And it was just really good because it was set up really well. We knew which books we were reading, when we were supposed to be reading them, how much of each book we needed to read each week. So I just felt it was really good and had a lot of different leveled books in the class.
Great, thank you.
My favorite class was my Intro to World Religions. It was Professor Wesh, and his videos are just so, they're just, he does a great job. If you have a chance or if he shares those, I think he shares some with other online teachers, but they're very interactive, and he just does a great job with his videos.
Great point, Bonnie. And we do have one of Professor Wesch's videos in the OCDI course. There was also an announcement in K-State today this morning, I believe, talking about his work with those types of videos. So be sure to check that out if you haven't seen it already. Kim, anything else you'd like to add about a favorite online course?
For me, it was very hard to pick because I think with my PhD program, there's really, I can't say there's necessarily one favorite because I've gained a lot of information from all. I would actually be able to say which one was my least favorite more easily. But the one I feel like I was really able to dig my feet into and really learn was I took a literacy assessments course. And we have several new administrators in our district now that wanted us to try some new things. So I really got down and dirty with the details of those assessments. I was forced to look at things that I really wouldn't have thought about just besides the data piece. So that one really made me have to think. So I feel like maybe that was one of my favorites. But like I said, it would be easier to say which was my least favorite at this point.
Well, I'm glad that you've had such a strong experience. On that note, we are going to end today's panel. I want to say thank you so much to our 3 panelists. You guys did an awesome job. And then thank you to all of our OCDI participants for joining us this morning. The recording of the panel will be put in the OCDI Canvas course soon. And if you have any additional questions about things that were brought up on today's panel, reach out to us through the Canvas course and we'd be happy to talk further. Thank you, everybody, and have a great day.